just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Today, I would like to introduce a Truth Seekers First. Our guest, Vicki, will be introducing herself, followed by this week's episode. Enjoy.
Hello, my name's Vicki Wusche. I'd like to introduce myself, and instead of doing the usual list of all the jobs that I've done and maybe even the places I've been, I thought I'd introduce myself by way of, I suppose, the last 30 years of learning, briefly, of course. So in the first decade, I really understood as a single mum, newly divorced with 2 children under 3, the importance of money and understanding how money worked, learning what it meant to be in debt, learning how to get myself out of debt, and the importance of determination to succeed. In the second decade, I'd become a university lecturer, and now I was earning a regular income until the point at which my employer decided to make me redundant. And I learned a massive lesson there about financial vulnerability. So you can understand how to budget, you can think you're fine, but circumstances change, as they have for many people in the last 2 years. And all of a sudden, you are now financially vulnerable, and then maybe back in debt and everything else that goes with it. So I then learned that it's really important to understand how money works. And one of the key words I picked up here was leverage, that it's not enough to just earn money, pay your bills, with a bit of luck, have some surplus and leave that sitting in the bank. You need to make your money work for you. So I became a property investor, and that was around 2008, that journey. Then over the last 10 years, what I've really understood is, having learned all about money, is that actually it's not really about money at all. Money is a way to get time. If you don't have enough money, you have to work. If you don't have enough money, you have stress. If you have enough money, whatever that amount is to you, you can have all the time you want to do whatever you like. You can spend your time focusing on what matters to you and the people that matter to you. So really, it's not about money. It's about wealth. And wealth is being in a position where you have enough money to have the time and the life that you would love.
Welcome to another episode of Truth Seekers, joining Coach Nick Davies and myself, Coach Josh Greco. We have Vicki today. Vicki, thank you for joining us.
Hello.
All right, I'm pumped to have today's conversation. First and foremost, I remember from our previous conversation, you have some unique outlook on wealth values. How do you define wealth values? What are wealth values?
Well, I think it's about understanding what the words mean when we use them. And so often when people say to someone, oh, you're wealthy, what they're actually talking about is rich, how much money they've got. And for me, wealth is much more than money. Wealth is your entire life, how you choose to spend your time and who you choose to spend your time with. And that means that you've got the money to do that, of course. So money's in there, but it's not the be all and the end all. It's about happiness.
I love that. So let's segue that into how have you come up with that? Tell us a little bit of background about yourself, how you've ended up at that conclusion.
Yeah, well, so, usual things people do, get married, have kids. Maybe not everybody does, then the marriage doesn't work, then single mum, then really understanding, crikey, I need to learn about money. And then making quite a quick connection that money was just maths. And I was good at maths, but I hadn't been very good at money up until that point. And then learning just to apply maths techniques to this thing called currency, and mastering that. And then thinking everything was fine and ended up being made redundant, and then learning about financial vulnerability, and quite frankly realizing that I've had an incredibly sheltered childhood because I never came across any of these things. My mum and dad never really discussed money, although they ran businesses. So I was like so naive until I'm a grown woman in the middle of her 30s with 2 children, and then I'm suddenly going, oh goodness, I need to learn about that, and oh goodness, I need to learn about that. So it's very money focused at the beginning, and on reflection it's money focused when you don't have money, when you can't pay the bills, when you're worrying about the bills coming through the letterbox, then you're more money focused. Once you sort out money and you understand how it works, then you can think about other things. And actually with a few, I know this is going to get a bit grim, but it's not this bad, but with a few near death health scare type things, and it can be experiences with family. You might lose a family member, or you might have a near miss in a car accident. You suddenly go, oh, I'm not immortal. Another lesson to learn. And maybe that also comes with age. I'm not immortal, and therefore maybe I need to invest my time wisely as well as my money. And that led me to wealth.
Yeah, so Coach Nick and I have talked about this on previous episodes. I'd actually like to get his thoughts on this, because this is a bit of a different spin on, we have a lot of wants, but we only get our needs, right? So if we have all these needs and all of a sudden we're not healthy, the one thing that we need in the world is our health, and then everything can build on that. So it's almost like that version of you was money, because you might have had a family at a certain point, but until you had the money situation figured out, you couldn't do anything else. That was the thing that would maybe give you the freedom to live your life the way you could. But as soon as you didn't have that, or there's a threat of not having it, then that became the most important thing.
I think it could have easily have happened the other way around. If I hadn't lost my relationship, then I could have been in a position where my health became the thing, and then health might make me think about health and wealth, and I might not have learnt the money lessons until later. So it's sort of just, it's how the universe offers the lessons to you in what order, and she does it differently for everyone.
I love the fact that, I mean, we do similar type things. I know you have some very specific focuses, Vicky, but it's so cool that it's coming out, and part of that is just telling the story. It's like I learn from how it came to me, right? How the experience came for me, and I love the humility of just saying, like, it could have been any other way. I just did what I had to do, and this is what I learned. But perhaps if you can see that here's the structure overall from what I know, then we can save some time. And I think there's so many different beliefs, negative and positive, about what money is, what wealth is, and completely, I think wealth is everything, right? Money is one specific part of it. People tend to get impacted by not wanting to take too much of what money is, meaning they don't want to be seen as just someone who's after the money. I think you put it great. It's like, it's part of it, right? It's part of the equation. You need to be having that part of the equation. It's not everything, but it's really important part of the equation. And if that's the thing, that's where your most leverage is, then that's where you should go. I'm always listening for like the catalyst or the moment that creates that leverage in people's experiences. And when you share that, right, it's like you said, Coach, what's the must in the moment? Like, what must be done? Like, no matter what, I'm getting this done, it's happening. So it's cool to kind of hear you share a little bit of that through your story. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What do you find is the thing that you deal with most with the people that you work with in that scenario? Like, is it tend to be like the different flavor of the same ice cream or of ice cream, or is it go all over the place? Like, how does it appear to you?
I think there's almost 2 paths that people travel, or maybe there's one path and then there's a fork, and you're poodling down your path, and some people will poodle down the path, and on the one side they'll keep going and they'll have issues around money. And I honestly believe that those issues are to do with maths, right? Simple. If you don't have enough money coming in to pay the bills that you've got that are going out, you're upside down. You're always going to be in debt. And until you learn that maths lesson, which is A minus B equals C, and C must be greater than 0, that's what those equations were for, if ever you remember them. But until you learn that lesson, then we're stuck. And then the other path that people go down, and I don't know whether they actually learn the maths lesson, or they're lucky, or maybe they have money in the background, or maybe one marries one other one that's got a good job, so they don't, maybe they skip over that lesson, but they have actual cash in their family. Then I deal with people who have got money, but now the lesson they haven't learned is the second lesson. So the first lesson is maths, subtraction, really. A minus B equals C. The second lesson is multiplication. Then I've got to take my C and times it by 2, 3, or 4 so that it lasts longer, and I put it to work. So at that fork, they either learn or don't learn subtraction, but then they need to learn multiplication. Now, everybody listening will have switched off at this point. I'm really sorry. Just come back. I know I'm using maths. It's perfectly okay. And I'm doing it deliberately.
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, it's nice to someone say maths. Hear someone say maths rather than math.
Oh, right. Yeah. Maybe that's English. Yeah. High five us.
Mathematics, right? Not mathematic.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. That amused me for sure. But really, really interesting the way that you've cut this out, Vicky. I think it's really powerful because so you've got to make sure that what's coming in is more than what's going out, right? Simple numbers, simple maths, right? And then I think the next point is, I wanted to see if I got this right here. It's knowing once the C is starting to build, it's what do you do with the C to always enable you to have more, right? And so that was something that was very interesting to me to figure out, like, because you said when you're growing up, no one really told you about this. Like, same for me, same thing. Like, it was always like, work hard, make money. It wasn't like, well, this is how you deal with it. This is what it should look like. This is how it's going to work longer term. How do you build legacy? How do you build generational wealth? How do you make sure that you're looking after yourself and everything else? So this last point is really, really important for me. And so thank you for sharing it. I think what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's being able to create more once you have that C expanding. And so to not be able to live off the interest or live off what you got, because that's a scarcity, right? It's like, I've got X amount of dollars, pounds, millions, thousands, whatever it is. And if I do this amount a year, I can afford to spend this month a year, and then hopefully I'll be dead by the time it runs out, right? Reverse is like, how do I use that money and buy things with it which pay me, so I've always got some sort of income when I'm not looking at the capital.
Yeah,
Is that somewhere in the ballpark?
Look at it two ways. You've got a golden goose and they lay eggs.
Yeah.
Are you going to eat the goose and then it's all gone? Even if you spread the goose out over an entire year and you have a wing and a piece of breast and then a leg, or do you just live off the eggs? And I think the real mistake here is, you said that we were taught at school, go out, get a job, make money. That might be what they taught us at school, but the minute we left school, they went, oh, you've got a job, buy this. Oh, you got a job, buy that. You got money, buy this. And actually what they've done is they've taught us debt. They've taught us credit cards, and they've taught us to spend more than we have. So even if you'd learnt subtraction and knew that your C had to be greater than 0, everybody in the world is trying to make you spend more than you've got, because that's the way our system works. And the second thing to learn here is, we're going to live longer than we think. The whole thing about retirement and pensions is, when they were set up back at the end of 1890 something, they were designed by wealthy business people, probably men, let's be honest, wealthy businessmen. And what they worked out is, oh, I tell you what, Coach Nick and Coach Josh, you've been really good, you keep working really hard for me, and I know you're exhausted. And what they said right in the very beginning is, when you're 45, I'm going to give you a pension. And you know why? Because at 45, you would be physically wasted and you wouldn't be able to work anymore in the jobs that you were doing pre-mechanization. But actually, you would also be dead, because the average age for a man was in the high 30s. So 37, 38, 39. So they set the pension age. The pension's only going to kick in after the bulk of the people are dead. And even now, if you Google average life expectancy of a man or a woman, and then look at the pensions, the pension is designed to kick in once the bulk of the people have died. And why is that? Because whether you are a private pension company paying out supposedly on the money that's been paid in, or whether you're a government supplying a pension, we can't afford for everybody to live and everybody to claim the pensions. So if you're going to live longer than before your pension comes in, you've got to provide for yourself. Oh, I've got really miserable on this. Let's talk something happy.
No, I think it's really important though, right? Because it's
I
back
know
to
it's
that
important.
leverage. So
It
that it's
is.
back to that leverage and the catalyst for people making change, right? Because most people wait for something in their life to give them that significant emotional event where they're forced into change. And having these real conversations is hopefully creating some of that event. So it feels like it. So they go and do something about it. So they haven't got to wait until someone dies or they run out of money or like something happens that they have to actually go and do it. So it's really important, right? And so thank you for sharing that. It's like, I don't mind that it doesn't feel good in the moment because it means something that's good, right? It's helping people. So it's crazy. Like,
It's
yeah.
such an important lesson,
Yeah.
such an important lesson. And I mean, we've just learned it again through my parents. I mean, my parents sort of lived into their early 80s. Yes, all right, the pension did kick in for them. But what it didn't factor in was the care that they would need. You know, once like the older generation, the generation that's in their 80s and 90s now, quite a few of them are going to need care. Think about your parents and how they're aging and when they're going to need care. And then think about yourself, also what you're doing to your body maybe, and how quickly you think you're going to need care. That has to be paid for. Just in the UK alone, in a very average, although nice, not the Ritz-Carlton of care homes, but my mum had to go into a care home and we were paying over £70,000 a year for her care. You know, where does that money come from? But you don't want, please, people listening, don't make that a burden that your children have to bear. Don't make them have to sell the family home where one of them may still live. Don't do that. Plan for it for yourselves. And then also, when you then decide to live a long and healthy life, you can spend some of that money along the way and have your round the world cruise and the holidays that you want and join the golf club or whatever takes your fancy on the way. But know that you've got a plan in place.
Yeah, actually enjoy life at that time. Doesn't that sound nice? So if that's the painful version of it, Vicki, tell us how maybe you're practicing what you preach. Like what's the pleasure version? What are you putting into practice now? How are you walking the walk and talking the talk here?
Okay, so what we did was we took the money that we'd made in our house, our capital gain, and some of our savings, and we invested in our first property. And then and I don't advocate this as a strategy, but I did do this the once, that when that property increased in value, we remortgaged it and we released it. And we were very lucky, 2008, we bought a flat in London and it went up a lot of money and it was worth it. Don't risk your whole portfolio by doing this. I knew what I was doing at the time. And I took that money and then we invested in lots of little properties because the prices in London weren't worth it. So we went up north, we bought little family houses. I'm very much, unexciting. Everybody wants to do all these wild and wacky get rich strategies. I'm in it for the long term. I want to provide decent homes for decent families. Someone did it for me when my marriage broke up. I want to do it for other people. So there's a bit of a personal motivation behind it. And those houses all generate income. Then, if you know how much money you need on a monthly basis to cover your bills, and I use that term enough, how much is enough to pay your basic expenses? So this isn't your holiday and your new car and your clothes even, or even doing your hair. This is food, bills, and living costs. You work out that number. That's a lot less than you need when you add in all your luxuries and non-essentials. And therefore, it's a much more achievable number. If that number was, let's say, 2,000, if you could find 4 properties that gave you 500 a month, you could have 4 properties and all your bills be covered. And that's basically what I set about doing. So we have a property portfolio, the money coming in basically covers the cost of our basic expenses. So I could just sit and do nothing. I couldn't sit and do nothing. I couldn't sit and do nothing. B, I'd talk Bob's ears off and he would die of probably boredom or something. I don't know, poor man, listening to me. But the other side of it is like your personal fulfillment. If you ever remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs when you were a kid and you learned that triangle, everybody knows the triangle. That man must be so famous. And the top one is about self-actualization. And it's all well and good. It's so I could give you enough money that you didn't have to work, but just enough so that you only had to sit in the room that you were in. You couldn't do that without the interaction with other people. You couldn't do it without fresh air. You couldn't do it without joy in your life. You need that. But I also think what people need is that opportunity to give back. I think it, maybe I'm naive, I think it is intrinsically in us, the desire to help others. And that's what I've got. And that's why I'm having conversations with you lovely people, the opportunity on podcasts to share. And if just one person heard this and went, oh my goodness, it's the maths. If I just did the taking away sum, I wouldn't have all the stress in my life. If I didn't have all the stress in my life, my relationship would be better. And if my relationship was better, then maybe my children still had a mum and dad that lived together, or my health would be better, or I'm going to do the leverage, the multiplication sum, and know that I've got that financial security. And for me, the financial security would then take the stress off. And if that makes a difference to someone, then that's why I love what I do. The thought that there's a pebble out there, maybe making a ripple somewhere, and I don't know who.
Right. And that's what this is all about, right? We have no idea who's going to watch this or when, but hopefully bring some sort of value. I love what you said about Coach and I talk a lot about the human needs, and we skipped over a bunch to get to that top of the triangle, right? There's a lot of other things that need to be satisfied before you can think about growth or contribution. But once everything is fulfilled, then you think about that long term. It's more of a long-term mindset, and maybe that's a good segue into the takeaway portion here. And this will be my takeaway today. It's just that how powerful long-term thinking is. Now, it requires more space and time for things to take place. But if you're playing that game, the rewards are so much greater at that level. You're not just living paycheck to paycheck or trying to figure things out. Eventually, you will get to a place when you execute the plan, or as you're executing the plan, of the way that you want to live your life. The only way to do that is to really think strategically about what it is that you want and work backwards. And that's what you're saying with the maths. Am I saying that right, guys? The maths.
Yeah.
Working backwards, right? Like what is it? What is that lifestyle that you want to live? Okay, what's the nut? It is here. How can I get that? And for you, it happens to be properties, and there's many other ways to get that. But just thinking strategically and thinking long term, and then along the way, it can be fun too. Like I'm sure you're learning a lot about properties and connecting with people and making deals and all that kind of stuff. So it's all encapsulated into this long term mindset that I think is the biggest change for certain people from that level of like graduating from school and now, hey, things maybe aren't as what we were taught. Here's a new way to do it, and that's what the takeaway for me is today. Coach Nick, a takeaway from you today, please.
The great stuff packed in here. Thank you so much, Vicky. And yeah, money is maths. Absolutely great way to think about it, because it's not something you can continue to apply. But what really stuck out for me was the order of the lessons, right? Like the human needs, or the Maslow's hierarchy needs. Like it's things pop up in different ways, right? And so many people, and I think about like my family, how I grew up, and my parents never get further along than figuring out the money part. Never figure it out. So never even think about what it might mean. And so many people, I think, do that. That's why there's stats about people retiring and then dying a year later, because they've got, oh great, I've got nothing to do. Great, I want to do it. And then they're fine for a week and they go, oh, actually life requires something. You got to do something. So it's like, I often tell people now that I'm retired because I just do what I want to do, rather than working for 20 years in a corporate setting that I didn't really want to do. But it's still like, you still have to do something. And so why not go do that something that you want to do anyway, and do it to a higher level of degree, and then you're going to get well compensated for it anyway. And then that will create, you've already won. And as well as making like the onward contribution to yourself and buying that income. And another thing that just reminded me as well is that as I'm thinking about what I'm creating and why I'm creating it, and an important reason that I often skip over for myself is that I'm doing this not just for me and my immediate family, but I'm doing it to take care of as many people as I possibly can. And if I'm doing it that way, it's going to create a higher level of pull for me and inspiration. And the more that you can put more people into why you're doing what you're doing, and the more you're likely to do it, because we tend to do more for others than we will for ourselves. So thank you so much, Vicky.
Thank you. That's totally true. I would agree with you. And I even did a newspaper article really recently about how I retired at the age of 48. And I know that looks like yesterday, but it wasn't. It was a few years ago. And I think one of the other takeaways from this is, remember that money isn't the only way that you can get compensation. Okay. So we have time. And the traditional model is trade your time for money. That's traditional. Yeah. But you could trade your time for a hug. You could trade your time, like I do, for that pebble in the pond that ripples out, that makes a difference to someone's life that you never know about. So you don't get the gratification. You're just dropping pebbles in the hope that they're helping. And then one or two people somewhere along the line let you know that it is making a difference, so that you know that they might be out there, but you just never know who. And that's exciting. So now I trade my time for excitement, and I trade my time for really helping someone save their relationship. So there's many other ways to get that compensation, and therefore to bring that actualization down even quicker for you.
Absolutely. And I just got to say this, because I think that's really important. The language around that, right? The trading of time, like you horse trading, I'll give you that, you give me something back. And we often, especially from an English perspective, talk about spending time. Gone, like you put it out there, it's gone. But how about if we just start changing the language of thinking about that? Anytime I'm doing anything, I think about, I'm investing my time here.
Yes.
Is it going to be a good investment? Is there going to be a return here? Is there going to be something where there is some sort of ripple effect down the line? Like, totally. Is my investment going to mean something, right? And if you think about that point of view, it's like, it's going to stop you. It's like, what am I doing here? Is this important, or is it not? Because once it's gone, it's gone.
Totally. I think there's a whole nother podcast there, picking up on Coach Nick's point there, which is about investing time. Yeah. And if you thought just on that sentence, how would you do what you plan to do tomorrow differently? What choices, even this evening, would you do differently if you knew that you were spending your time and it's a finite resource? Very
interesting. We talk about return on investment, ROI, return on relationship, ROR, return on value, ROV. How about ROT, return on time? A conversation for an episode in the future.
Yeah, and you will rot if you don't choose carefully. Yeah.
Vicki, thank you so much for joining us on Truth Seekers. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been great to have a chat with you.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.